For our $1 million challenge, one of the ways we find properties is by going to auctions. This is an auction property, and a lot of times people wonder, is it even possible? I don't know how it works. I don't know where to start. Do I have to bid? Do I pay all of it up front? Well, today I'm going to show you exactly how it's done. For our $1 million challenge, this is one of the properties, and this one came from a sheriff sale. In some states, it's also called a trustee sale. So let's go inside. I'm going to show you exactly how it's done. So when we talk about auctions, there are two ways how you can find auction properties. Number one is what we call the sheriff sale or trustee sale. Number two is going to be online auctions. You can bid on the properties for online properties that are going to go to auction. These are properties that are already owned by the banks. We're going to break down each one of them and show you how you find the best deals at the sheriff sales as well as online. So the first place that you want to start, if you've never looked at a list of sheriff sale or trustee sale properties, is you want to go to Google and you want to look up the county that you're in, of course, and you put in the county and then put sheriff sale right after it or trustee sale. Depending on the state you're in, the area you're in, they may be called different things, but in fact, they're basically the same. So all you do is look up the sales that are coming up for this week or for next week, depending where you are. The number of properties going to auction is going to vary. For us in Cook County, which happens to be a really large county in the city of Chicago, we have literally 70 to 80 properties, 70 to 80 properties to 150 properties every single day that end up going to sheriff sales. So we have an auction that happens 2 or 3 times a day, right? Every single day, 5 days a week. Now, in counties that are a little bit farther away from city of Chicago, the auctions don't happen as often. Sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's maybe once a month. So in your area, it's very easy to look it up, and this is public information. So this information is not at all hidden, and everybody has access to it. And if you can't find it, just pick up the phone and call your local sheriff's office, not the police department. The sheriff's office is what generally handles that, and ask them, hey, where do I get a hold of the list of the trustee sales or the sheriff sales? Sometimes they're also handled by a local attorney or a local company that's been appointed by the regular county. You know, the best part about these sales, they're public, meaning anybody and everybody from the public is allowed to attend this auction. You don't have to have money. You don't have to have anything. And if you're just getting started, my first suggestion would be is pull up the list. Look up the properties, start identifying, is this in a good area? Is this an area I may be interested in? And just go ahead and go and attend the auction. You don't have to bid. You can just go sit there, watch the entire process, see the people that are bidding. This is one of the best ways for you to start building some confidence, for you to start learning who are the players, who are the attorneys, who are the people that are doing the auctions, so you can start gathering more information in your particular area. See, the best part is that anybody, even if you're brand new, you can get that process started, and you absolutely do not need any money. Step number 3 for auctions or sheriff sales is going to be going and bidding. Now, this is the final day where you're going to go and actually put your bid on the property. Now, the most important thing is, did you do step 2, which is, did you do your ARVs? Did you do a research? Have you figured out what you're going to bid on the property? So let's talk about that. How do we come up with a price that we're going to bid? So I'll use this property as a perfect example. So the first thing you have to realize is, when I'm buying a property at sheriff sales, well, are the taxes paid? Am I going to come up with any surprises? I may not have seen the inside of the property. I may be buying the property occupied. There may be some defects in the property that I have not seen, even though I've tried to do all the due diligence I could, but I may have had to do it from the outside, exactly like we had to do in this case. So in that particular case, you're going to adjust for those things. So what is the formula that we use for that? So here's a very simple formula, and this will work anywhere in the country. Doesn't matter if you're investing in California, if you're in Nevada, if you're in Arizona, Florida, or if you're in Illinois, doesn't really matter. So you take your ARV, And then instead of taking 70% of it, that's the formula we use whenever we're doing a regular flip, whenever we're buying a property from the MLS. In this case, you're going to take your ARV and you're going to multiply that number by 0.65. Why 0.65? Well, we're being a little bit more conservative than the number that we have. So we're going to be 0.65 of that number, and then we're going to subtract our rehab number. Now, whenever I'm buying a property from sheriff's sale or from any type of auction where I've never seen the inside of the property, guess what I'm going to do? I'm always going to be a little bit more conservative. I'm going to estimate my rehab a little bit high so that I can adjust for it. So before, and this is important, before I get to the auction, let's say I'm going to try to bid on 2 or 3 properties, because maybe I'll bid on 2 or 3, get nothing, or maybe I get lucky, get 1 or 2. Sometimes we get really lucky and end up with a couple of properties. So I'm going to have that number written down, and that's going to be my hard and fast rule. I am not going to go above that number. Hopefully, when you go to the auction, you win at that number. But guys, remember, there are hundreds of properties that keep coming up, especially in highly dense populated areas. In areas where the population is not as dense, you don't have as many auctions. Guess what happens? You don't have as much competition. So at every place, you have an edge. So make sure you have your number written down, you've done your research, and do not bid any higher than that number. You have to have that discipline when you're bidding at auctions. Let's say you went ahead and won the particular property. Now, immediately, you need to get out to the property, post a notice at the property that, hey, we're the new buyers for the property. It's going to go to confirmation. Depending on the county you're in, the area you're in, the confirmation sometimes will be in the next 15 days, 30 days. So that just depends. But then you need to work with the homeowner or the tenant that's living in the property, and always try to do cash for keys. A little bit of money, $500, $800, $1,000 to try to get them out rather than try to do an eviction. Like in an area like Chicago, it can take 3, 4, 5, 6 months to do an eviction. So congratulations. Now, at least today, you know the basic steps of bidding on an auction property. Next, we'll talk about how do you find properties online auctions. So what is the difference between the online auctions versus the sheriff's sales? The properties that are going to sheriff's sales or trustee sales are properties that are at the last stage of the foreclosure process. So inherently, when you're buying a property at a sheriff's sale or a trustee sale, that's going to have a lot more unknowns than the properties that you're going to bid on the online auctions, like sites like auction.com, Xhome, Hubzoo, or HUD Home Store. So inherently, online auctions are going to be much safer. So what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages? So the advantages of buying properties online, number one, that the properties that you're going to buy, the title issues, the unknowns are going to be a lot fewer, so they're a lot safer. What is the kind of the cons of that process? The problem with the online auctions is there are more people that have access to online auctions because they feel that it is safer and you have a little bit more competition. But we're going to talk about how do you win over the competition, meaning how do you get a leg up over the competition. So let's first talk about the 4 websites. We mentioned Xhome, Xome, auction.com, Hubzoo, and HUD Home Store. So the first rule of thumb you have to do is every single week, pick one day. One day when you're going to kind of go through and make it, let's just say you pick Thursday. Thursday at 4 o'clock, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to go create an account. That's going to be step 1 in all the 4 websites. And I'm going to go and shortlist my properties. And when I shortlist my properties, I'm going to make sure that they're bank-owned properties or they are short sales. I'm not going to chase properties that are going to sheriff's sales or that are trustee properties because those we already covered in the first section. So when we're doing online, only shortlist and save the properties that are going to go to online auctions. The second thing, when you're saving those properties, you want to look at properties that are going to go to auction in the next 2 weeks. Don't worry about the next month or 3 months or 4 months. Those may not matter. Just focus on the properties that are going to go to auction in the next 2 to 3 weeks, so that's where you start your due diligence. Now, we're going to go back to the process that we talked about during the sheriff sales, which is your due diligence process. Now, you're going to go and do your due diligence on the properties that you're going to be bidding on. So you're going to first start with figuring out, is there an agent that is assigned to these particular properties? A lot of times these properties may also show up under the auction section in your MLS, and there's going to be an agent that is going to be assigned to it. Even if it says the property is not vacant, even if it says there's no access, make sure you pick up the phone, call that particular agent that is assigned to the property, because a lot of times they'll have inside details. A lot of times they will know that, hey, the property is going to be vacated. We've been working with the person that's living in the property. They'll have a lot more details for you. So make sure you do that. That's going to be the first step of the process when we talk about the online auctions, which is going, shortlisting them, putting them as saved or properties that you like in your dashboard, and starting with the research, figuring out the ARVs, talking to the agents. So that's going to be step 1 of the online auctions. Step 3 in the process of bidding online auctions is going to be whether you win the bid or whether you do not win the bid. So first, let's talk about, let's say you bid and you do not win the bid. All is not over. This is the most important thing that you have to keep in mind. A lot of the properties that are going to online auctions, all of them will keep coming back over and over and over. And I know if you're a new investor, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to be like, Andrew, this doesn't work. Trust me, the process works. You just have to understand how to work with the process. So what will happen is, a lot of times you'll put your bid and somebody's bidding way higher. You have no idea. A lot of times the bank is bidding on their own behalf, which is called a proxy bidder. Guys, the reason these banks take these properties to online auctions and are not putting in the MLS is because they want to basically create a pandemonium in the market, create a high demand in the market artificially, and they're trying to get a high price. You just have to have your number in place and not bid anything more than that. So make sure, because look, next week, the property, a lot of times, 10, 12, 15 times, we've had properties that keep coming back over and over and over to the same auction until we finally win it, because guess what? We were consistent and we were persistent. So now let's assume that you won the auction. You actually followed the process and you had your number and you get the bid. You won the auction. It's going to say sold, congratulations, and they're going to immediately send you an email in your to you, and make sure you open the email, fill out all the details that they need, and they need that contract back, and immediately they're going to ask you for a down payment or earnest money. Generally, it's 5% of the property purchase. One important thing to keep in mind, that some of these properties are going to have a buyer's premium, meaning on top of your max bid, you're going to have to pay a 3 to 5% buyer's premium. So make sure you read the instructions properly prior to you bidding the property. Sometimes that can be a surprise for people. So once you send them the earnest money, they're going to release the credit card hold, and then they're going to tell you generally, well, it's going to be 30 days to closing, depending on if you're looking for funding. Remember, we had pointed out nationalrefunding.com. You can get funding from them, or you may have your own funding or your own cash. Generally, these deals do not close in 30 days, even though they tell you it's going to be 45 to 60 days. And at that time, you have to come up with the rest of the money. So that's the way the process works. Remember, with online auctions, you have to understand this is a game of patience. You're not going to generally bid once and win once. And if you bid once and you win once, you've probably paid way too much for the property. Understand that even if you have to bid 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 times, it's not costing you anything. Every time you bid, they just put a reserve on your credit card, a hold, and then they release it. So it does not cost you a thing. That's the best part about it. And you can kind of sit home and bid at that specific time and you're good to go. One of the best ways of finding properties. Next, we're going to talk about how we found this particular property, and I'm going to show you the numbers. Okay, so we're back in the office in regards to the property here in South Holland. And remember, this was an auction property, so I have a little bit of extra expense on this property because our property taxes are prorated. So they run a little bit behind, so I have a little bit of extra expense that I have to account for on this particular property. So I bought it at the sheriff's sale for $133,000. The extra expense accounted to about $8,000 in taxes that were unpaid. The rehab amount on this property was $48,000. Remember, we redid the kitchen, we opened it up, we put in an extra bath downstairs, so that was about $48,000. Finance charges were about $13,000, and the sales cost is about $14,000 on top of that. So that's a total of $216,000. We have this property right now listed for $310,000. So conservatively, if I'm in the deal for about $216 and I have it listed for about $310, we believe we can sell the property somewhere around $305. That's a profit of somewhere around $85,000. And I'm saying somewhere around that number because the property has not sold and closed yet. So we're just going to consider about $70,000 on this property. I'm being really, really conservative just so that I don't give you an excessive number on this property. So I hope you learned a lot. There was a lot that we covered on this particular property. We talked about buying at sheriff sales. We talked about buying online auctions. Hopefully you will go take an action, even if you don't go look at the sheriff sale properties, because that's a little bit more advanced. But for sure, look at the properties, all the websites we gave you for the online auctions, because that is something, a great source for you to be able to find some great deals for your $1 million challenge. This is Andrew. Talk to you in the next video.